There's a reason you've always felt older than your age. A heaviness you couldn't explain. A sadness that didn't belong to any memory. And a power that terrifies even you. This isn't your first lifetime. You were born under Scorpio not by accident, but because your soul has traveled through the underworld more than once. You've tasted betrayal in kingdoms that no longer exist. You've bled for people whose names you can no longer remember. And you've watched empires burn sometimes because you lit the match. But what if I told you that even now, even in this life, parts of those pasts are still living through you? That the fears, the patterns, the passions, the instincts, they didn't begin here. They began long before. And until you remember them, until you face them, you'll keep reliving them over and over again. You see, Scorpio is the only sign ruled by Pluto, the planet of death, rebirth, karma, and transformation. That means you carry more lifetimes in your soul than most signs will ever imagine. But with that weight comes a sacred opportunity to awaken through the remembering. Today, we go deeper than we ever have. Together, we'll uncover 10 past lives that still haunt the Scorpio soul. Each one carries a truth about who you were, what you lost, and what your spirit is still trying to complete. Some will feel like stories, others might feel like memories. And one of them might shake you so deeply that you realize you've lived this pain before, you've survived it before, and this lifetime might just be the one where you break the pattern forever. Let's begin. Past life. One the silent healer burned in the fire. They called her a witch, but all she ever did was heal. In a village swallowed by cold fog and colder hearts during a century where knowledge was feared and intuition was punished, she walked in silence. She wore no crown, held no scripture, but wherever she passed, pain began to retreat. She was quiet, observant. She knew which herbs stopped the bleeding, which oils cooled the fever, which prayers eased the grief. No one taught her. She remembered, not in her mind, but in her bones. She was Scorpio, not in name, but in essence. Mysterious, intense, drawn to what others avoided. While the townsfolk worshipped the sun, she waited for the moon. While others feared the dark, she worked in it, not to harm, but to understand what hid there. And for a time, she was needed, quietly, gratefully, until she healed the wrong child, the mayor's son who survived an illness no one else could cure. Her success became suspicion, her gift a threat. Whispers turned into warnings, gratitude turned into fear. And then the fire came. They tied her to the stake in the village square. Not one person looked her in the eye. The smoke rose, the flames danced, but she never screamed. She didn't curse them. She didn't beg. She only closed her eyes and remembered all the lives before this one, where she had also been punished for her power. And as the fire took her body, her spirit made a vow: I will never again give my truth to those who fear it. How this past life still haunts Scorpio. If you've ever found yourself afraid to speak up, if you've hidden your intuition, your power, your ability to see through people, if you've been silent, not because you wanted peace, but because you feared rejection, it may not be because of this life. It may be because once upon a time, your truth got you burned. Scorpio's silence is not just personality, it's protection, it's memory. Signs of this past life echoing today. You distrust praise you've seen it turn before. You hesitate before helping, afraid it might cost you. You have a deep love for healing, but rarely ask for recognition. You fear being too much or too intense. You feel an irrational fear of being exposed, punished, or shamed even when you've done nothing wrong. These are not weaknesses. They are survival patterns, leftover soul scars. The lesson of this life: you were never too powerful. They were too afraid. In this life, the fire no longer waits for you. This time, your gifts are not meant to be hidden. They are meant to be reclaimed. Scorpio, the world may still misunderstand you, but that is no longer your burden to carry. Let them misunderstand. You're not here to be understood, you're here to transform. Past life. 2. The warrior who took too many lives. He wasn't born to fight, he was made into one. In a time when empires rose by the sword and fell by betrayal, a boy with Scorpio eyes was ripped from the arms of his mother and trained not to feel but to follow, not to question but to conquer. And so he did. He became a shadow in the battlefield, precise, relentless, unforgiving. He did not speak, he did not hesitate. He did what he was told and more. His commanders loved him, feared him, whispered stories of how he moved through blood like water, how he never looked away from the faces of those he killed, because he knew to look away was cowardice. But what they never knew was that each night after the battles, he wept. Not because of guilt, but because he could still feel them. The men, the fear, the last breath, the scream behind the eyes. He didn't just kill with his blade, he absorbed the agony, carried it, never released it. He was Scorpio. Even in war, he felt too much, and feeling too much in war is a curse. One day, he refused an order. He refused to slaughter an innocent village, women, children, elders. He stood between them and his own army. And in that moment, he became a traitor, a target, a man who had taken hundreds of lives now hunted by the very ones he served. He died alone, but not empty. He died carrying every soul he'd taken, praying that in the next life he would never again be used to destroy. How this past life still haunts Scorpio. Scorpio, if you've ever felt the weight of guilt you can't explain, if you've looked at your own anger and feared what it might do, if you've walked away from conflict, not because you were afraid, but because you were afraid of yourself, then perhaps this memory is yours. You see, when a soul has taken life, even under command, even in defense, it remembers. Not always with clarity, but with feeling. Today, you might fear your own temper, even though you rarely lose it. Sense a dark, suppressed rage that frightens even you. Feel overwhelming empathy for victims of war or injustice. Carry a deep sense of justice, not just for others, but as if you're trying to balance something inside. This may not be your trauma. It may be the echo of the pain you caused and never forgave yourself for. The present day echo. You may instinctively protect the weak even when it puts you at risk. You may avoid authority or challenge it when it feels corrupt. You may struggle with forgiveness, especially of yourself. You may feel both predator and protector, unable to reconcile the two. This conflict within you, it's not madness, it's memory. The lesson of this life: power when given to the wrong hands becomes destruction, but power when reclaimed through self-awareness becomes protection. In this life, Scorpio, you're not here to fight their wars. You're here to end your own. You're not here to destroy. You're here to transform what destruction once did to you and what it made you do to others. There's a reason why today your heart aches when you see injustice. There's a reason why you feel like you're here for something sacred, something redemptive, because you are. And the soul of a warrior, when it heals, becomes the soul of a guardian. Past life. 3. The forbidden lover. They weren't supposed to love each other, but souls don't care about rules. In a time of arranged marriages of family names and bloodlines and class divisions carved in stone, two people met not as symbols of their houses but as humans, and they saw each other, not with eyes, but with something deeper, like a memory, like recognition. She was promised to another. He was sworn to protect her family, and yet love came anyway. Not loud, not dramatic, but sacred, gentle, inevitable. They met in secret. Not to sin, but to remember. To share silences that felt like truth. To escape a world that told them who they could and could not belong to. They planned to run away. They never got the chance. One letter intercepted, one whisper overheard, one betrayal, and everything collapsed. He was exiled. She was imprisoned, not behind stone, but behind duty. She married a man she never chose, bore children with a heart half dead. He died in war, never having said goodbye. But their souls never separated. Even in death, they searched for each other. And perhaps that's why in this life, Scorpio, you love like it's a secret. You fear love like it's dangerous. And when you love, it's never casual. It feels like fate because maybe it is. How this past life still haunts Scorpio. You may wonder why your heart hesitates, why you pull away just as someone gets close, why you test love over and over to see if it will betray you, and why even when someone says they love you, you don't fully believe them. Scorpio, it's not always because of what happened in this life. Sometimes it's because in another, you were punished for choosing love, and now your soul remembers that choice and its cost. Signs? This life is echoing in you, a deep craving for soul-level intimacy, yet an equal fear of vulnerability. Patterns of falling for emotionally unavailable or forbidden people. Feeling like your true love is out there, someone you've always known. Dreams of a lover you've never met but feel like you remember. Struggles to fully trust even those who've never betrayed you. This isn't weakness, it's the soul protecting itself from a grief it never fully released. The lesson of this life: love is not the enemy, loss is not the punishment, avoidance is not the cure. Scorpio, this life is not meant to repeat the last. You are allowed now to love without hiding. You are allowed to be seen, to be chosen, to be safe. And if you still feel that your true counterpart is somewhere else, perhaps they are walking this earth now, also searching, also remembering. Because when love spans lifetimes, it does not die. It simply waits for the soul to be ready again. Past life. 4. The oracle who spoke the truth too early. She could see the future, but the world wasn't ready to hear it. In an ancient desert kingdom where kings feared prophecies and people worshipped appearances, there lived a girl with eyes that glowed like embers at night. She spoke little, but when she did, her words shook the air. She could feel the pulse of storms before they reached the sky. She could smell betrayal in the robes of priests, and she could hear death days before it arrived. They called her gifted, then dangerous, then cursed. She never asked to see, she only asked to be believed. But when she spoke of famine, they laughed. When she warned of war, they silenced her. When she cried of a child born to bring ruin, they exiled her. And when everything she said came true, it was too late. The city burned, the throne crumbled, the people once dismissive came back begging for answers. But she had vanished, because Scorpio doesn't beg to be heard. She waits for the world to realize she was right all along. How this past life still haunts Scorpio. Scorpio. If you've ever known something deeply, instinctively, immediately, and then silenced yourself. If you've swallowed the truth to protect others from it. If you've seen betrayal coming before it happened and still let it unfold. It may be because your soul remembers what happened the last time you spoke too soon. You weren't wrong, you were too early. And being too early can feel like being invisible. Signs: this past life echoes in you, a powerful intuition you often keep to yourself. A fear that speaking up will make others reject or ridicule you. A pattern of being too honest and watching people drift away. Feeling the weight of unspoken knowledge, spiritual, emotional, or ancestral. A strange connection to ancient places, symbols or languages you've never studied. You may carry a deep awareness that others don't, but you've also learned being right doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it brings isolation. The lesson of this life: your sight is not a curse, it's a contract. Not to control others, but to understand timing. Scorpio, in this life, you are not here to convince. You are here to observe, protect, and prepare. And when the time is right to reveal, you no longer need to scream the truth. Now you can simply live it and let those ready to hear come closer. Because power that is quiet, that waits, that speaks only when it must, is the most unstoppable force of all. Past life. 5. The betrayer who never forgave themselves. They trusted you, and you broke it. In a lifetime ruled by empire and ambition, Scorpio wasn't a healer, a warrior, or an oracle. He was an advisor, a man of words, power, and presence, trusted by the king, admired by the court. But beneath the fine robes and quiet strength was a storm. He had loved the king like a brother, but that love turned to envy, and envy in silence turned to resentment, and resentment, as it always does, became a plan. He didn't strike with the blade, he whispered, planted doubt in ears that mattered, spoke truth twisted just enough to cause collapse. He thought it was justice, he told himself it was balance. But when the crown fell, and the man he once called brother was led to his death, he knew it was revenge, and it had ruined him. He lived the rest of his life surrounded by power, but tormented by silence. No amount of control, wealth, or success erased what he had done. He would walk by the sea alone for hours, whispering apologies to no one. He never touched love again, because he knew he had destroyed it once and feared he would again. He died respected, but not at peace, and his soul, reborn as Scorpio, still carries that guilt like a scar carved into shadow. How this past life still haunts Scorpio. If you've ever pushed someone away the moment they got close, if you've sabotaged your own happiness without knowing why, if you've carried shame so deep you can't name its source, if you've punished yourself for things that weren't your fault, it may be that your soul still remembers being the one who crossed the line. And Scorpio, when you were the one who betrayed the pain, lingers even longer because you knew better. You always know. Signs. This past life echoes in you a deep fear of hurting others even accidentally, over-apologizing or overcompensating in relationships, feeling undeserving of love, peace or second chances, pushing away those you love most just before they can hurt you, a pattern of self-destruction when things feel too good. You may not remember what you did, but your soul does, and it's been trying to make amends ever since. The lesson of this life: redemption is real, but it begins with truth. Scorpio, the greatest healing doesn't come from being forgiven. It comes from forgiving yourself. This life is not punishment. It is opportunity to make different choices, to protect what you once destroyed, to be the one who stays when others run, to be the voice of loyalty, not revenge. Because betrayal, when faced and owned, becomes wisdom, and wisdom in Scorpio's hands becomes power. Past life. The child who died holding a secret. He was born during a cold winter in a home too quiet for joy. The youngest of 5, the smallest, the most watchful. He did not cry loudly. He did not demand. But he saw everything. His mother's sadness, his father's silence, the way people spoke one way but felt another. At 4, he asked questions no one expected. At 5, he knew who was lying even when no one admitted it. At 6, he stopped speaking as much because he realized the truth scared people. He held a secret, not one he was told, one he felt, a family truth, dark and old. Something about what had been done or who had been hurt. He didn't know the full story, only that it burned in his chest like fire. No water could soothe. One day he tried to speak. He whispered the truth to the wrong person. And that night, he vanished. They said he ran, but his soul remembers the truth. He was taken silenced because the secret he held was too dangerous. He died young, not in fear, but in silence, still holding the thing no one would let him say. How this past life still haunts Scorpio. Scorpio, if as a child you felt older than your years, if you felt invisible even when surrounded by people, if you cried not from pain, but from a sadness you couldn't name, if you sensed things in your family that no one ever spoke aloud, it may be because your soul has done this before. You've carried truth before, and it cost you your voice, maybe your life. So in this life, you hesitate before speaking. You watch first, you feel deeply, and sometimes you ache with a sadness that doesn't belong to this lifetime. Signs. This past life echoes in you. A melancholic or emotionally intense childhood without clear reason. Sensitivity to family secrets or hidden dynamics. A strong intuition from a young age and discomfort with it. Fear of speaking up or knowing too much. An unexplainable connection to lost children, silence or hidden truths. You may even find yourself comforting others with words you don't know where you learned. You might dream of being small again, lost unheard, and in those dreams you may feel what your soul still remembers, that sometimes children see more than adults want to admit. The lesson of this life: truth, when unspoken, becomes poison, but truth, when held with wisdom, becomes light. Scorpio, in this life you are no longer a child. You are not powerless, you are not too much, and your voice is no longer a threat. This time when you hold a truth, you can share it. Not to destroy, but to free. Not to punish, but to heal. Because the secret you died with might be the truth someone else needs to survive today. Past life. The priestess who broke her own vow. She was chosen at birth, not by her family, not by her people, but by something older, the stars, the temple, the divine. She was raised behind stone walls surrounded by silence, ritual, and sacred fire. Her body did not belong to her. Her voice offered only to the gods. Her purpose to protect the sacred veil between the world of spirit and the world of man. And she was good at it, better than any before her. She could see signs others missed. She could call the wind to calm storms. She could enter trance and return with messages so exact kings bowed before her. She belonged to no one, until him. He was not a threat, not a conqueror or heretic, just human. He brought books, questions, eyes that didn't worship her but saw her. And something inside her shifted, not violently, but with quiet terror. For the first time, she wanted something for herself. The moment she kissed him, the veil tore, not in the sky, but within her. Her visions became unclear. The temple grew cold, the sacred flames dimmed. The elders knew. They stripped her of her robes. She was cast out not for sin, but for breaking the contract, for choosing love over purpose, emotion over sacred duty. She died alone in the outer lands, but not in bitterness, in grief, and in deep, unspoken guilt. Her final thought, "I chose my heart and it cost the divine," and that thought became a scar, one still felt today. How this past life still haunts Scorpio. Scorpio, if you've ever felt that love and purpose pull you in opposite directions, if you feared that intimacy might cost you your power, if you've denied your own desires in service of others and resented it, if you carry guilt without knowing its source, it may be because your soul remembers a time when you chose love and the world called it betrayal. Signs. This past life echoes in you. A struggle between duty and desire, never quite feeling you can have both. A tendency to self-sacrifice even when it damages you. Feeling you must earn your spiritual gifts back. Deep connections that feel forbidden or too powerful. Guilt after joy, as if happiness must be punished. You may feel like you've lived two lives, one in service to something higher, one in longing for something human. And within that split, Scorpio carries a wound that whispers, you can't have both. The lesson of this life, but the truth is, you can. The divine never asked you to suffer for your light. The sacred never demanded you silence your soul to stay holy. In this life, Scorpio, you are here to reclaim both your sacred path and your right to love, your devotion and your desire, your mystery and your humanity. You are no longer a vessel that must be emptied. You are the flame itself. And this time when love knocks, you get to open the door without burning down the temple. Past life. 8. The seeker who went too far into the dark. He wasn't born evil, he was born curious. He wanted to understand why people suffered, why some died young, why love vanished, why pain returned in cycles always wrapped in new names and faces. He studied the stars, the bones, the ancient languages no one spoke aloud. He spent years in hidden libraries, caves, temples long buried beneath dust. He didn't want fame, he didn't want gold, he wanted to know. And for a time, the knowledge made him wise. People came to him for healing, guidance, protection. But curiosity never stops where you expect it to. One night, under an eclipsed sky, he opened a book sealed in chains. It was said to hold secrets not even gods would speak. And what he found wasn't knowledge, it was power. He began to predict death, then delay it. He learned to pull shadows from people's spirits and sometimes insert them. The lines between healing and control blurred. He justified it all. To protect the light, I must master the dark. But the truth was simpler. He wanted to outsmart the pain of being human. And in doing so, he stopped being fully human himself. Eventually, he lost his mind, or maybe it left him first. They say he vanished beneath the earth. Some say he became a shadow. Others say he begged the heavens for mercy and heard nothing. But his soul remembers, because knowledge once misused leaves a stain, not on reputation, but on the heart. How this past life still haunts Scorpio. Scorpio, if you've ever been drawn to power not for dominance but for safety, if you've wanted to know what others refuse to see, if you've explored the taboo, the forbidden, the secret, and felt both thrilled and ashamed, it may be because your soul remembers a time when your hunger for truth became obsession. And even now, you might fear what would happen if you let yourself go that deep again. Signs. This past life echoes in you. A fascination with the occult shadow work or esoteric knowledge. A fear of becoming too powerful or too dark if you go too far. Cycles of diving deep into inner work, then retreating in fear. A sense that some doors inside you are locked for good reason. A quiet fear that something inside you might awaken and not stop. This is not a punishment. It's a reminder that knowledge without grounding can destroy more than it heals. The lesson of this life, the goal was never to avoid darkness. It was to bring light through it. Scorpio, your ability to explore the unseen is not a curse. It is a sacred task when done with integrity. This time, you don't need to control everything. You don't need to know every answer. You don't need to manipulate fate to feel safe. What you need is trust. That light can exist without force. That healing can come without domination. That you are strong enough to enter the dark and still choose the way out. Because you've been to the edge before. But this time, you walk back not alone but awakened. Past life. And the guardian who watched everyone leave. He was the last one awake, always. When the village slept, he patrolled. When the storms came, he stood at the edge of the forest, shielding the homes with nothing but his body. He buried the elders, held the dying, welcomed the newborns, carried the weight of 1,000 lives. But no one ever asked if he was tired. He was never chosen. He simply stepped forward every time someone needed protection. People called him steady, strong, a pillar of the community. But no one ever called him home. He watched his friends leave, some for better lands, some for war, some because they simply outgrew the life they shared. He watched lovers find each other, marry, move on. He held every letter of goodbye in his hands. And though he smiled for them, every departure carved something out of him. Over time, he became the only one left. And when sickness took him, there was no one left to bury him. His body was found weeks later in the same chair he sat in every night facing the stars, still watching, still waiting, still guarding a place that no longer needed him. And his soul still remembers. How this past life still haunts Scorpio. Scorpio, if you've always felt like you were the strong one in every room, if you've been the shoulder, the secret keeper, the protector, but rarely the one who's protected, if you've loved deeply, quietly, and watched others leave without ever looking back, then perhaps it's not just this life speaking. It's a soul that has been left behind, again and again. You learn to be the one who stays, even when no one asks you to, even when no one sees it. Signs. This past life echoes in you, a pattern of being the emotional anchor in relationships, struggling to ask for help even when you need it, a sense of loneliness that doesn't make sense even in a crowd, fear that opening your heart will just lead to being abandoned, feeling like others always move on but you remain holding the space. You may not say it aloud, but in your silence is a prayer. Please don't leave, not like the others. The lesson of this life. Scorpio, your loyalty is sacred. Your heart, though guarded, is a sanctuary. But even the strongest soul needs rest. Even the most powerful protector deserves to be held. In this life, you are not meant to be left behind. You are not meant to carry everyone else's pain while ignoring your own. This time, it's your turn to be chosen, to be stayed with, to be kept. But that starts with one truth. You must stop leaving yourself. Stop abandoning your needs in the name of being strong. You don't have to prove your worth through endurance. You've done enough. You've given enough. Now it's time for someone to stay. And this time, let that someone begin with you. Past life. 10. The soul who chose to be reborn one last time. You didn't have to return. Your soul had earned its rest. You had felt the fire of betrayal, wielded the blade of guilt, spoken truths that got you exiled, watched people vanish while you stayed behind. You had learned enough. The cycle was complete. The karmic wheel could stop turning. You could have become light again, dispersed into the great silence beyond form, beyond feeling. But something pulled you back. Not punishment, not unfinished business, not even attachment. It was love and purpose. You looked back at Earth, broken, loud, divided, and you saw someone, a child, a version of yourself, someone who would need a guide, someone who would walk through the same fires you once did. And you said, I will return, one last time, not to suffer, but to free. And so, you became Scorpio, born with shadows in your blood, born remembering pain you'd never lived, born feeling like an outsider, not because you were wrong, but because you were old, ancient, wise. You didn't forget everything. You kept the silence, the instinct, the hunger for truth, the fear of loss, the longing for meaning, all of it still with you. And now, Scorpio, you're beginning to remember why, how this past life still echoes in you. You may feel like life is heavier for you than others, like your emotions have depth no one understands, like you're always standing at the edge of something larger than yourself. You're not imagining it. You didn't come here to float. You came here to transform, to end the cycles, to heal the karmic lines, to stop the patterns that have haunted your bloodline, your past lives, your spirit. You are the convergence point of everything your soul has carried and everything it's ready to release. The final lesson of the journey. You are not broken. You are not cursed. You are not doomed to repeat the pain of the past. You are the one your past lives prayed for. Scorpio, this is your final return, and it is not for survival. It is for completion. You are not here to be the silent healer who dies alone, not the betrayed lover, not the power-hungry seeker, not the guilt-ridden warrior. You are here to integrate all of them and become whole. This time, you don't just carry the fire, you are the phoenix. And when you rise, you take every version of you with you. Conclusion. A return not to suffer, but to remember. Scorpio, if you felt that your emotions go deeper than they should, if you've carried fears you can't explain, longings that don't match your life, dreams that feel more like memories, you're not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not imagining it. You are remembering. Across these 10 lives, your soul has carried pain, power, passion, betrayal, silence, and sacrifice. You've lived as the healer and the destroyer, the forgotten and the feared, the guardian and the outcast. You have felt what it means to love and lose, to fight and regret, to speak and be silenced, to stay when no one stayed for you. And now in this life, you get to do something no past version of you ever could. You get to choose differently. You can speak the truth and still be safe. You can love and still be chosen. You can walk into the dark and come back whole. You can carry power and not let it poison you. You can end the cycles. You can close the contracts. You can become not what the world expects of Scorpio, but what your soul has waited lifetimes to become. Free. This is your turning point, not just in this life, but across them all. And maybe that's why you're watching this right now, because some part of you has always known you've lived this before, but this time it ends differently. So I ask you, Scorpio, which past life spoke to you the loudest? Which one felt like a mirror, a memory, a wound you've been trying to name? Let me know in the comments. Because sometimes writing it down is the beginning of setting it free. And if this journey spoke to your soul, subscribe to the Path to Buddha Wisdom, where we dive deep into the mysteries others are too afraid to explore. Because Scorpio, your story doesn't end in the dark, it begins there. And from that place you rise every single time.